Hope everybody's doing okay. This is Slaves of Satan 17. Um, Carl Jung, and it's also the sequel to Slaves of Satan. I would say this episode is the sequel to episode 14, which was about Carl. Sigmund Freud. This is about Carl Jung, who was the apprentice of Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud was bad in his own right, and was a very wicked man and a sex fiend and a pervert among other things. But Carl Jung did a lot more damage to the world because of his certain concepts landed in the popularity of people that was into the occult a lot more, while Sigmund Freud's his concepts were eventually realized as pretty much just retarded, and nobody stuck with them. Okay, so let's get started, because I have a lot. I knew a good bit about him, but there was a lot more information than I thought. And the problem is, people in the occult or into the non-godly side of metaphysics, or the evil side of esotericism, um, they they are into this guy because his books kind of blend the line between just basic psychology books to occultism, and he was basically a closet case occultist. But anyway, let's get started. There's probably gonna be a lot of slides, because this is probably gonna be a long video, and I would recommend watching episode 14 first. Because all these episodes is, like I've said multiple times, is to build up like I'm a prosecutor making a case. And while Crowley is at the center of this case, I'm pretty much trying to hit every field of society in some way. But the most influential thing he came up with is this archetype thing. He believed that primarily humans only had 12 archetypes, which is their personality, which obviously I do not believe at all. God made us all completely different. That means if somebody wants to use the term archetype, which I personally would not use, then there would be an infinite amount of them. And also, people like Anton LaVey took the term archetype, and in the Satanic Bible, he talks about Satan being an archetype, or the Satanic Temple. Since they claim the same thing, they claim that they don't believe in a literal Satan, which they don't, but at the higher levels of the Church of Satan, which is Anton LaVey's group, they do. And archetype, the concept is so influential. I can't tell you how many games I've seen it in, or uh, that's probably where you see it most in video games. And he claimed, and he was into psychic abilities, and he made the claim that the phallic god could potentially be an archetype. So just like Sigmund Freud, he's obviously a pervert to an extent, maybe not as bad as Sigmund Freud, but he was a pervert. Like Sigmund Freud claimed that every mental problem in life was because women wanted to have sex with their fathers and men wanted to have sex with their mothers. But people finally threw his opinions away eventually. But Carl Jung is still going strong, and while psychologists usually tend to be um rational. He believed in metaphysics, which so do I. People know that I'm a very big believer in metaphysics, and it does work. But you should make but it's you should make sure that you are only doing it in a way that Christ would permit, which is very little times where he does permit it. He was into mythology, and we'll see more on that right here in a minute. So he also, I think he coined this concept, anima and animus. Now, anima means a feminine part that you see in men, while animus is masculine sides that you would see in a woman. That's yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Now he's a big believer in duality with the yin and the yang, which I got into that in one of my occult symbol videos. There's no reason to get back into that right now. Now he believes that the anima, which and keep in mind that this was so influential that this is how they got Animus from Assassin's Creed. Not that I enjoy those games, but I know enough about them. But for men, he believed that the different mythological um uh, anima that influenced us was Persephone, Hecate, Minerva, um Pandora, and Eros, and I'll and of course there'll be slides up there for to explain who all of them is. And he also included Eve, Helena of Troy, Mary, Mother of Jesus, and Sophia. And by Sophia, he means the Gnostic Sophia, the one that the Gnostics teach. Um, um so the Gnostics teach that the God of the Bible, Yahweh, is evil, that He's trapped us here, and that a being named Sophia, which is actually Satan, they don't believe that. They believe a goddess named Sophia sandaled a serpent in the Garden of Eden and saved mankind by giving us knowledge, by giving us the apple. And someday I need to do an entire Gnostic breakdown. It's very, 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 very long and complicated to do, which I don't mind doing. But right now, my focus is on individual people. And he said that he did not focus as much on the animus, which was for women, which was Tarzan, Byron, Lloyd George, and Hermes. And I find it interesting they would pick Hermes because Hermes and Thoth makes Hermes Trismegistus, and he studied a lot of different religions. He studied Taoism. Then after that, I studied animalism. I don't consider that a religion, but animalism that is. And now we see a pattern that continues, and this is who my last video was about, and I made it because the name just kept popping up, and then it popped up again when I was doing additional research for this video, because I've known about Carl Jung for a very long amount of time, but I had no clue that I didn't know that there was this much to it. I thought I thought that there was maybe 30% of what there was. He was very into Friedrich Nietzsche, which is a very dangerous person to start getting immersed in. He was a philosopher, and in general, typically philosophy is not a good thing to get into. Most of them are atheist or a different religion other than Christianity. They normally don't believe in God. And ones like Friedrich Nietzsche, they're very hateful. I would say, other than Crowley, he might have been the most hateful philosopher at that time. I'm not a philosophy person, so I can't say um if he was the next um violent and cruel one next to Aleister Crowley, but I always hear people link Friedrich Nietzsche to him when they're talking about philosophers they like. And Aleister Crowley did call Friedrich Nietzsche a saint of Thelema, even though he wasn't not in Thelema, because they had slightly different age gaps, and Friedrich Nietzsche died, I believe, age 44, while Carl Jung lived up. For that time, he lived a pretty long life. And he took inspiration from his books Human, All Too Human, and Beyond Good and Evil, which I spoke about in my last episode, so I'm not going to go in depth about those two books again right now. And another concept Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Jung came up with was synchronicity, which was pretty much a term he came up with. That's a broad term for the paranormal, because he was very into the paranormal, and his writings and his teaching of this synchronicity played a big part in the New Age movement, which thankfully is not as big as it was, but there's still plenty of them. He was into I Ching, which is a certain type of writing system in Asia that can be linked to a cult. He was into Bakwa, which is based off the yin and yang. I'll put the slide up. It's it's interesting to look at it. I believe it has the yin and the yang in the middle. I haven't looked at a Bakwa starting forever, but the best way I can explain it is it takes the yin and the yang, and it very deeply um expands on it a lot more, and gives you a lot more of just a blank good and evil answer. And I mentioned this in my not last video, but 2 videos ago, how in the Asian culture, white means not pure, and while black means pure. Like on the wedding day, if she's a virgin groom, which unfortunately virgins are now a hard thing to come by, but people wear black on their funeral, and then typically white on white. I mean, black on wedding days, white on funerals. All right, what's next? So Ruism he was into as well, which is the study of the doctrines of Confucius, which is a religious movement that he was, and I think he might. No, he's not alive anymore. Or I think they just give the people the title of that. It's it's like I'm a religious leader in one of the Asian countries. He was very into astrology, and he was into Plate, Platonism, which is Plato's philosophy, which nothing good comes from Plato. I tell people this all the time. He was one of the first people to write about a one world government, which I believe they call Plato's perfect government or something similar to that. They basically believe Plato had the blueprint for a perfect government. Oh, but while I'm on the topic of that, the only thing that is worth talking about, for at least for now, that Plato did talk about was Atlantis, because Atlantis is absolutely real. He researched subliminal messaging, which back then, um, uh, let's see, because when he was, I guess when he was close to dying, TVs were just starting to pop up in households. So the subliminal messaging thing was kind of a new term when he was in his latter years. But I guess he was speaking of things you see in symbols when you leave the house, because people said that either anoint themselves with olive oil, pray, take a prayer cloth with them, or all three when they go to these stores, because you're bombarded with sizzles when you walk into these stores. Oh yeah, he was also into hypnosis, and he was also into putting people into trances. He was into sleepwalking. He was into delirium, comas, and this is interesting right here. And for people that's been watching my videos for a long time, I'm a non-Trinitarian. I I hold the doctrine of the oneness apostolic Pentecostal church. So to me, Jesus is everything because Jesus Christ is everything. Jesus Christ, Yeshua, who died for us, is God and is the God of the oneness Pentecostal church. But while I hold to their doctrine, I hold to their doctrine of biblically, I consider myself an esoteric Christian because I still believe in the pineal gland as being a God gifted ability. I don't. It doesn't bother me if someone calls it the third eye, because we're all talking about the same thing. I believe that's an ability that God gave us. God wanted put put a gland in our forehead to sabotage ourselves into worshiping the devil. He wanted to do that because our body serves a deeper purpose than people think. Just like our wisdom teeth, I believe they serve a little bit more of a purpose than what we believe. I'm very glad that I never got that done and never got any of the vaccines. I never got the middle school vaccines either. One of the only people in America that never got them because thankfully I live in the only state that has religious exemption, and I had a mom that that while she did not want to learn any kind of advanced topic, she loved me enough um to know that it was not a place for me to want to go to, and there's nothing good there. So I just learned how to read and write there, and once third grade hit, the work got to be meaningless. So I educated myself, and I did about a month of fourth grade and never went back. All right, let's get back onto the topic. Oh yeah, like I was saying, he believed the devil was the fourth part of the Trinity. That's very interesting. He was into Satespian and the Egyptian gods, Set specifically. He was he had an interest in necromancy, and he was to take note that Michael Aquino and Aleister Crowley was both very interested in the Egyptian gods. Oh yeah, he also played a part in Alcoholics Anonymous, and eventually I'll do a video about that because that's very deceptive. It's not what people think. The that came straight from an ascended master. We'll get to that on a much later episode. Later in his life, he got into Carl Jung got into UFOs, and that's something you'll see with almost all these people too. They always somewhere in their life, these occultic groups and these people always at some point get into aliens or UFOs, and he was also into the Apollo and Dionysus system of duality that Friedrich Nietzsche was into as well, where basically Apollo is calmness while Dionysus is chaos. And of course, he was into stupid Darwinism, and I try to take up for these people when they're astray and say that it's not always an intelligence issue, because it's not. How are you? Sometimes it is an intelligence issue, sometimes it's not. But if you believe that we came from an ape or any form of Darwinism evolution, there is a intelligence issue at play. And I don't care what a college professor would say. Um, anybody that believes that has some retardation in them, and this is not arrogance, but I I declare myself to be smarter than Carl Jung. It's ridiculous to think that we came from an ape. Read Genesis 6:4, then read the book of Enoch, and just you only have to read like the first, I think, 10 chapters to see this, or read the book of Jasher. Read the 12 patriarchs. Read Jubilees. Um, Samyaza and the 200, well, the 20 lead watchers and the 200 watchers came down. The giants raped the women. Well, some they raped, some willingly had sex with the watchers for for benefits, and their punishment was to become marine spirits, like like sirens or mamiwatas. And Samyaza and I believe in Jasher 4 verse 18 that says this. Samyaza mess with the human DNA, mix it with the animal DNA, and we got hybrids. So it's actually much more possible that the gorilla, monkeys, and apes actually came from. It's possible that it actually might have came from a human instead, because the book of Genesis, right when you open up the Bible, within I think it's within 2 chapters, God makes a man. Now, nobody has to believe everything I say that sees these videos, but it just to me at this point, it just common sense. And the dinosaurs too. 80% of those bones is a so-called educated guess. If those dinosaurs ever lay down like those so-called big T-Rexes, they would not even be able to get up. They would just be on the ground forever, with the little hands trying to stumble to get back up. Because up until the mid 1800s, we called those things dragons, because that's what they are. There were dragons on the earth. So, I will reason enough with somebody to understand that these things aren't really actively on the earth now. I understand that. And that's because when men used to do manly type things, they used to hunt these things down and were harboring them in the dumbs. And also, they're hiding where Admiral Byrd talked about in Antarctica. But it is highly possible that the ape came from us through samyaza mixing up the genes. That's easily possible for that to happen. And in my opinion, that's a good sense of what did happen. Let's see. Now that I got my rant about Darwin out the way. Oh yeah, and Darwin played social Darwinism played a role in Hitler's rampage too, because the Third Reich was a lot about eugenics. Just like I was saying in my last episode, that Friedrich Nietzsche inspired him, Carl Jung inspired him. I mean, not Carl Jung, sorry. Charles Darwin inspired him. Aleister Crowley inspired him. Carl Jung inspired him. Sigmund Freud inspired him. He studied Hinduism and Buddhism as well. He studied Gnosticism, which I explained earlier. Eventually, I will put out a full video breaking down Gnosticism. It will probably be over an hour, but that's fine with me because I know that not many people do, but people do need to get back into the habits of. Oh, sorry, I fell asleep for a second. I'm sorry, I've been up for a long time. Anyway, so he studied Hinduism, which is demonic in every way, and then he studied Buddhism, which is primarily fake because they did not deify Buddha until 600 years after Christ um rose from the dead and ascended up into heaven. He studied pantheism, which is part of the doctrine of Hinduism, basic where they believe there's 330 million gods, so they'll believe there'll be a god of pens, a god of a notebook, a god of energy drinks, a god of highlighters, a god of a carpet, a god of smartphones. It's that's retarded. That's an intelligence issue there. He studied Gnosticism, which which is what goes back to what I was talking about Sophia. And he was in the Oxford group. Now a lot of people don't know this just because I think the name is what tricks a lot of people. But the Oxford group was an occult group, and he also I mentioned earlier how he was part of Alcoholics Anonymous. He also helped Bill W. make the 12-step program, which I'll pull it up eventually whenever I get to Bill W. I'll do a detailed analysis of the 12-step program and the life of Bill W. and the events that happened to him in the hospital of what caused this to happen to him. And he studied Catholicism. Because see, and these people, I mean, they only read their Bibles because they're scared of facing their Creator one day. That's the only reason why. he was in something called the Emmanuel movement, which which was a group. I think it was in the early 1900s at this point, and it was just a group of different psychiatrists because there wasn't really many places for them to really conversate and meet up at that point in time because like I say, American psychiatry is new, and before I get to the end of this video, I want to remind people that made it this far. I sort of gone over this again at the beginning, but the main problem with American psychiatry is that they do not look at humans as a triune being. They believe that no matter what, everything has to be either a problem with our body or a problem with our mind. And usually it is. Because it's not, I mean, I don't believe the majority of America or the world is walking around possessed. Now, we're all oppressed by something in some way, but not that many people are possessed. But there is times, and I've witnessed this and I've lived it. There is times where people are fine physically, fine mentally, but a demon, and in the worst case scenario, you'll have something like a fallen angel or an ascended master, um, something from part of the Astar Command, the Mahatmas, the Sotmas, the unknown hierarchy. At the worst case scenario, something like that will bother you. And just like all these occultists that I go through, he was very um, open and interested in homosexuality. I mean, if you've been watching these, you've probably noticed that like 15 out of no, not quite 15, but almost everybody that I've actually, if this is 17, I would say I think 13 or 14 out of them have been either bisexual or homosexual. Um, he was also into alchemy, of course. And why would somebody in the 1900s be into alchemy? Because these people, before anything else, are occultists. They're into they want to make the philosopher's stone. And now in the modern day, they realize that very few people that ever lived managed to make that, while people like Saint Germain, Nicholas Flamel, and a few others did apparently succeed in making it. It's not something that can just be emulated. And it's said that the person that brought the emerald tablet over here that had had the alchemy over here. He was the one that one of the last ones that kept studying that. Sorry that I'm nodding out a little bit. Um, this is probably one of the I understand this is my one of the lower quality videos, but please stick with it. I'm almost done. But what people need to realize nowadays is that they've moved on from the philosopher's stone, while people like Saint Germain, Nicholas Flamel did probably make it. Now they're moving on to transhumanism. Oh, and what I wanted to say, I think I nodded out and skipped over it, was about how we're a triune being. We have the body, we have the soul, and the soul determines how we think. So the soul can be tamed. Then we have the spirit. That's what returns to God when we pass on someday. And he also pushed for the use of psychedelics, which is pharmakeia, which I'm strongly against. It changes your brain chemistry forever, and it usually just makes people even more depressed after they already use them. After you use them, I mean, it destroys the brain even more, far much more than marijuana, and I don't care if they say microdosing, it still destroys it. And I'll put up what it is. He's started something called the Myers Briggs type indicator. Oh yeah, now back to Bill W. So Bill W. was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think he was in rehab like a total of 20 some times, and one time he eventually ended up in the hospital because of his alcohol withdrawals, and he claimed that they cried out and said, "If there's a God, please help me." And none of us knows what Jesus Christ looks like, but Bill W. basically claimed that a spirit came down and talked to him, and when you read the accounts, it sounds mostly like an ascended master. But Bill W. does need to be talked about. And to show Carl Jung's current influence, one of his other things he came up with was Persona, and one of the most popular Japanese RPGs, which I'll admit I play games. That's how they get the name for the game Persona, because of this all because of his name. Um, and the video game Control of was based off a lot of his um, um concepts. The video game Alan Wake was. I believe Alan Wake 2 was as well. And he believed in the collect. He started this too. He believed in something called the collective unconscious. Now, a lot of people don't know what that is, and that's fine. But the collective unconscious is the belief that there's information floating around everyone's subconscious mind that is all the same. And if anyone's played Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal, which is just an enhanced version of Persona 5, you'll probably understand what I mean by that. He was a member of the International Psychoanalytic Association. And ding ding, just like 15 out of 17 of the people so far, he was indeed a Freemason. So, his cover is blown of why it was successful. Now, while I believe his dad wasn't, while I believe Sigmund Freud was not, or at least I cannot find any evidence that he was, he had connections to get in there. And like I say, there is other secret societies that you can join where Masons will accept you. Like if someone tries to be a Rosicrucian, they'll usually um they'll usually be okay with with um with um with Freemasons. Um yeah, I think Sigmund Freud. I think his dad was. I think it was his dad that was. I think the two people that I wait. No, I think Sigmund Freud. Oh yeah. So wait, Sigmund Freud was a member of something. Uh, he might have been a Mason too, actually. But Carl Jung was absolutely a Freemason, and his father was. It ran in the family with him, which is why he was able to become famous. And that's about it. And I highly apologize for nodding out and messing up so many times. If this is the first video that you've watched from me, I promise that um, this is not the norm. I've been out for quite a while and haven't really got any sleep. I laid down, then of course the phone rang at almost midnight, and then I couldn't really go back to sleep, so I got back up. But please give the other videos a sense. This is by far the most tired that I've ever been. I was not like this before I started the video. It kind of hit towards the middle, but I apologize. Have a good night.